Okay, so today we're getting started with the React lifecycle, and we did the class component here. So we're doing the React lifecycle now, and that will be the last for this week. And then you guys gonna go to the sprint project. Okay, so React lifecycle, what is it? Every component in React has what we call lifecycle. A lifecycle is a part of how our components operate under the hood. Being able to demonstrate understanding of the React lifecycle, React component lifecycle by knowing how to use few of the methods that are provided by will help you understand how and why React behaves the way it does. All right, so our objectives today, you should be able to, at the end of this class, you should be able to describe 3 phases of the React lifecycle. Probably also explain what the constructor and the render methods do and what their places are in that component lifecycle, and also use component did mount function to set the component's state post render. So what is a lifecycle in general? So lifecycle in general is just life cycle of humans. So as a person, you went through life cycle. You basically go through childhood. So you were young one time, and then you become a teenager, and then you become a older teenager, and then you become an adult, and then elderly, and then after that you just go through there. So that's your life cycle. So you're born, you're young, you're middle, and then you're old, and then you die. So that's kind of like your life cycle. And React components also have life cycle. They begin, they go in the middle, and then they complete or die. So this graph is basically showing the 3 stages of the life cycle. One stage is called mountain. Basically, that's when the React components is starting. So when it's the first stage, when it's as you can see here, it says the birth. So mountain is the birth, when the app starts. Then there is updating, which is the growth, as you can see here. Basically, this is like your teenage years and your middle age years, and then unmountain. Unmountain is just dying, I guess. So right here it says death. Unmountain is when the application gets removed from the DOM. So that's unmountain. Unmountain is when it's added to the DOM. Remember, we saw many times when you go to React components, for example, something like this, you go to index.js, you see that here it doesn't show, but you see that it will have something like document.get element by ID, and then there's a root. So that means it's getting connected to the DOM. That's when it starts. And then the last one is when it gets removed from the DOM. So as you guys know, React has something called virtual DOM. So that's when you remove it from the DOM, that is called unmounted. And in the middle is the updates. Is basically if you want to adding new props, changing the state, updating the state, updating the components, that is called updating. So these are the 3 stages. Okay. So here it says the birth or the mountain. This is the phase when the component is being built out from the ground up. A few things are happening here. Whatever initial data you want to access will be defined on the constructor of this phase. So basically any data like the state and the constructor, everything happens here. Also component did mount, which we will learn today, will be called component did mount, is equivalent to use effect in functional component. And then the growth, in the growth updating phase, you're updating the component data. Set state is one of them. Should the component update is another one. So this one is another method for the class components, which we will not go in depth today. And then the last one is self-explanatory, but the unmounting phase includes removing component from the screen. Component is removed from the screen, component will unmount. This function will be called to clean up, if you want to clean up stuff. Okay, so that's basically what we're going to talk about today. We're going to build a basic application using explaining basically what we just talked about. So how let me just show you as an example, like as a basically how it happens. We have a functional component here, and we can change it to class component if we want. This functional component, we added a state here. This is a basic state, nobody's using it. And we said, we console logged, we said the state is running. So that's the first step. And then there is the use effect, which is equivalent to component did mount, which we'll learn. We'll get to that. So I created a console log, and we can see kind of like the order. We can actually give it a number here. We could say 1. We could say this one 2, and here the JSX, or the last part of the render, is run. So 3. So if it gives us an order, then that means that's the order they kind of render on the first try. And then if we update something, of course, use effect usually update. That's where you update stuff, and then it updates the state. Then that means the use effect will run, and then the state will run. So if we look at the console log now, this is our app. You will see that it actually kept running. So if we clear this one time and maybe refresh this, you'll see that the state run, and the use effect run, and then the JSX run. So let's see. We can look at, let's see. So we can look at here. Yeah, so I was actually wrong. The JSX, which is the render. So here is actually a diagram of how the diagram I was just showing you here, but this one is more interactive. So you could actually click any of these elements. The mounting stage, you have the constructor, which is the state. Always the state runs on the first render. Then the render, which is the JSX, right? And then component that did mount, which is the use effect, right? So that's how they run. As you can see, render is basically our JSX here. So this should be number 2, and this is number 3, right? So that's kind of like the order they run. So if we save now, you see that 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's very, very important to know that. The reason for that is when you're trying to update stuff, you know which one renders first, right? There was actually an application I was working on, and I was having a hard time with the way that the use effect runs. And then I realized the JSX actually runs before the use effect. So I had to put a delay in the use effect for it to show something in the JSX. So this is really important to know. There's also a lot more options if we click here. As you can see, there's a lot more running here. But the main thing you need to know is the constructor, which is the state, the render, which is the JSX, and then the component did mount, which is the use effect. That's how they run. And if we change this to class component. So let's change this to class component. Who can help me change this to class component? This or component, functional component. Who can help me? So this is the name of the function. We can move this. Let's move this to the bottom so it's a little less complicated. Let's say that. So here, what do we change to here?
You're gonna say you're gonna remove the function.
Remove function.
Class name. Class.
Class. Okay. And then what do we say after
that? Class. The class name, and then after class name, extend.
Extends. Okay.
And
here,
React dot component.
React dot component. Yes. That's the component. Okay, so now we did the class. We need to do the constructor. How do we do the constructor?
You're gonna put constructor and then constructor and parentheses.
Then
Okay.
open up color bracket.
Okay.
Prefix.
And what do
Put
we put in the
Super.
super? Okay. How do
And
we
then-
change? How do we move this state inside the constructor? How do we write it?
I don't know. Just move it there.
This dot state.
Should we move it there?
Oh, it was
You
a
sure?
state. No, the state is gonna look
This
different.
dot state.
No, the
Okay,
state is
okay.
gonna look different.
So let's comment this out. So this would be this dot state is equal to
Yeah,
that,
I
right?
forgot that.
So how do we put this state? We didn't put yet. We set up the state object first. What's next?
Just put this task as a key.
Okay. And
That's all I
then
remember.
Then you say set test.
set test here.
This does something. I don't know. Was it
You
like
sure?
that?
You sure about that?
No, I don't think it's that way.
No, you're gonna say quotation only. You can make empty.
Okay, empty. Yeah.
Oh,
So remember that test is this, and we don't need the set test because remember that class components have this dot set state for everything. So you don't need to do any set. And remember that this is equal to here. So it's equal to whatever this state is. So if it was like this right here, if it was like that, then you make this like this. Okay. So that's how you change it. So we could leave it empty right there. Okay. So now let's comment out this too. We want to change this use effect. I don't think you guys have seen that. So I'm gonna do this for you. So the use effect, we're gonna change it to component did mount. And we will learn this today. So component did mount is a function. And it's basically, that's it. So let's see, actually, I think that's how it's written. Let's go back here. Component did mount. See, so this is state. Component did mount, where is it? Okay, so component, yeah, component did mount, and then we put something in it. So component did mount, that's how it's written. Did I spell it correctly? Okay, yeah, I have to comment out this. All right. Component did mount, and we put whatever we put in here. So we say here, instead of use effect, this would be component did mount. And it has to be written like that, component did mount with a capital G here and M. Sometimes it's called CDM. Some people call it that. So it's equivalent to use effect. The only thing is that component did mount, use effect has many functions within it, which is also mounting basically the state and whatever you put in there, mounting it, and then also unmounting it or removing it. Use effect does it automatically, but component did mount, if you want to remove something from from the state, or let's say from the DOM, you have to use something called component will unmount, right? It's a similar function, and then whatever you want to remove at the end of the rendering, you could put it in here. So sometimes if you have like a timer or set timer or something like that, and it's keep running, you could put it in here and say stop that when the component is removed from the DOM. But usually you don't use it. You just use component did mount and then render whatever you want. Usually you call here everything you call in use effect, you call in here, like side effects, right? So who can tell me one side effect? What were the side effects that we talked about last time?
Can you repeat the question?
What could be a side effect that we need to call inside either component did mount or inside the use effect?
The actions.
ABI calls, yes. Yep, ABI calls was one we did. So ABI calls, especially like get requests, you never know if the server is going to return anything. So if it returns or not, nobody knows that. So you put it inside here or inside the use effect so that it doesn't change it how the component renders, right? You want the component to be predictable and rendered in a certain way every time. Otherwise, the component could basically stop or go depending on if it receives something or not, all that stuff. So all side effects go inside component did mount, just like the use effect. And we could talk about other side effects, but that was the big one we talked about. Okay, lastly, what do we need to do here to change this to a class component?
Render.
Render, yes. So we're missing render here. So render is a function that returns our JSX, right? So render like that, and then behind this you put that. That's it. So that's our class. Another thing is you don't need this, so we could remove this right there, like that. Okay. Okay, so we have a class component. So now if we save it, it should work like normal. If we clear here and run it again, it gave us 2, 3. Okay. We're missing, we're missing this. So we have to put this in the constructor. So right here in the constructor, we could put that, say here, constructor run. Let's try constructor. Okay, so if we clear this and refresh, constructor runs, the JSX runs, or sometimes this is called the render actually. Render runs, and then component did mount runs. So that's also the order. The class and the function is the same order when it comes to how things run. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I hope you guys get that. That makes sense. Any question about that before we move on? Okay. All right, so let's move on. So our application today is this. We're going to be building a simple, small application, which will be, which will show animal pictures and stuff. So we have to grab an API, render that, and then, no, not an API, sorry. We have the data here, no API. We have to render this data in our app and loop through it and all that stuff. So let me quickly change this to class component. So we can move this down. Sometimes it could confuse you, so it's good to remove this down. App, and then this would be class. And we remove this extends react.component, and here we add the render. If you know how to do this, how to change a functional component to class component, class component to function component, that would be big. Like in the workforce, in a lot of companies, they are looking for people who can do that, who understand like how React works. So this is a good skill to have. And a lot of companies are actually moving from class to functional component. So they will ask you to change a lot of components from class to, and you see a lot of functions that need to be changed and things like that. So it's a good skill to have. In here, one thing we could do is that we haven't done before is you could omit the constructor. You don't need to declare the constructor, especially if you have like one state, right? So what we could do is we could say state is equal to that. And then here we're going to say animals. This will be our state. You don't have to declare the constructor. It's not must. The only thing you have to declare is the render and the return. Other than that, you don't need to declare anything else. Okay, so this is our state. And the next thing we need to do is we need to bring in the data, of course. So let's bring that in. So I'm going to say import data from data. Okay, and then we need to set that data to here, but we have to do it inside the component did mount. The reason for that is because it's a side effect. We don't know if this data is going to be working. Yeah, we don't know if it's going to be there or not. So we have to put it inside component did mount. Okay, so this is a function. Okay, so in here, what we need to do is we just need to do, we need to set this data to our state. So what do we use to change the state? What is the method we use?
Set animal. Set
animal. You sure about that? Should we say
no
set animal?
the set state this.
We're gonna say this dot state.
This dot state. Okay.
That animal. No.
So that will call this state. That will bring in this state. We want to change it. We want to modify it.
Oh, we're gonna say this dot state and then spread operator.
Okay. That's also is in there. So
we're setting
set state, Miles. The set state.
Set state, yes. Set state. Remember that if you want to change the state for class, you always have to use set state. So it's always
so now
this
the animal.
So this that set state is similar to this is similar to it's similar to set animal, right? Like let's say if we want to state, if we want to have a right here, if you want to have like functional component, usually you say const animals set animals, right? And then here you use the state, and here we say like that, right? So if we want to change, should we say set animal dot or something like that? Or remember that set animal is a function.
No.
So okay, so here we do that, right? Because it's a function, we have to invoke the function first, and then give it whatever the state is, or spread the state, and then modify what we want to modify, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So first we have to make a copy of the state. Let's put this in an object. Copy of the state. That would be this. Yep, this dot state. We could just say this dot state because there's nothing else in the state, so we could just copy like that if we want. Could also say dot animals if you want, but an easier way would be like that if you don't have anything else. And then the next thing would be we need to add this data to here. So we have to declare what we want to change, which is the animals, and then we're gonna make it equal to data, which is our data, right? So now we could console log the state and see if we have the data coming from here. So remember that if you want to console log, you console log inside the render. You cannot console log it here. Console log this dot state. You could just say this dot state if you want. There's nothing else in there. Now let's open this. As you can see here, we have it empty first because it was rendering, and then we have 9 things here, as you can see. Okay, yep, 9 objects. Each object has information, image, and a name. So that's good. So we need to render the name and the image on the image. So we're good now. The next step is we need to render that. So we need to create a component for that. So our component here, we already created one called animal. We just need to fill it in. We don't need to have a class component here. You could just make it a functional component. Import React from React. And here we're going to say function animals. Of course, we need to pass props eventually. And here we return a we basically have to look through the prop that we received, right? So let's put a diff for now. Let's put some information here, h2, h3, animal data. Okay, we have to export the export default animals. All right, so we have to import it here. Import animals from dot components / animals. All right, so let's render it right here. Let's do that. So let's render it here. Animals, like that. Okay, animal data. So we're good there. We need to pass a prop, this animal data. Who can help me how to pass a prop to this component? This is the component. We need to pass a prop of the state. This is state. What do we do here? Let's call it animals, the prop.
Okay, so you pass the prop name if it was animals.
Yeah, you just say animals. That's a prop name, and then
you pass the date. You pass. Okay, yeah, curly bracket, and the state, the last state that you modified.
Okay, so how do we pass that? What do we put in here?
You put animals. Basically, that's the last one we have, right? That's what we're set where we set the data to.
Okay, animals. Okay, Mohammed, you were saying something?
Yeah, you're gonna say this dot state.
Okay. Keep in mind that if you are in class component, always if you want to grab something from the state, you have to say this dot state, and then you grab like that animals. So that's the way to target the animals. This dot state is some object, so that's why we're saying dot. That's how you grab it. So this looks good. Now let's remove some console log here. Console log it. The console log our props here, to just make sure that we receive the props that we're looking for. Save, open console. Okay, so we received it here. So it's right there. Good. So now all we have to do is just loop through it and then show the information, right?
Wait, how do you set the name to the props? How does it know if there's other props? I was trying to find where you put animals. Animals just prop one place.
So right here, we named the prop animals here. You could name it whatever we want here. You can name it holo, save it, and then go here, and we render it. As you can see here, it says holo. That's our prop name.
Okay. But how does it know if it's this from this component? What if there's other components that has the props?
It knows because we imported the animal component here, and we said, okay, the animal component, we have the animal component, and we render it here, and then we said, okay, we have information for you. So we gave that information, which is this. Now, if you go to animal component and say props here, put props here, you can name whatever you want here. We could call it holo, and that will still be fine. And that will still render fine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because it says holo from here, and then on the other side.
Usually, if you see other companies and other apps that were already built, they always say props here. And that means this is a property. So this is properties, right? Remember that we did like the functional constructor functions in JavaScript, and we always pass like properties, attributes, right? We pass attributes, and then the attributes become properties, and then we have methods and stuff like. So that's where it's coming from, because this function is it builds as a component, and that component it needs a state. Usually the state is a object. So always props are objects, right? So if you look at them, they're always objects right here. So you see, this is an object. If we don't pass anything here and save it, you see that it's an empty object. You could pass something here. You could say my name, and then pass like Mohammed. and you see that my name is equal to Muhammad is a prop, right? So you could pass anything here. We could pass my location, or you could just say location if you want, and pass it like Ohio. And you see that one of the two, we have two props, Muhammad, my name, your location. That's the two props we have, right? So that's usually how props work. They're object, and then whatever you pass them, you could grab them from the component. So let's call them animals. This dot state dot animals. Yeah, you could practice the components. We did. I think it was our second React class. So maybe if you go back to that lesson, we'll explain a lot more. All right. So so here we have the props. So we have to loop through them. So in this div, I'm gonna add a class, which I already know because I set up the CSS beforehand here. So I added a couple of things here. So this class would be container. And let's close this. And in here, I'm gonna add a H2, H1. Let's add, let's keep it like that. We already have H1 here, so we're good. We don't need to render it again. No, actually, we're gonna, we don't need this, never mind. This, we already have it here in here container. So we don't need it here. Here will be just an empty div. So let's do the rendering. Let's remove this and do the rendering. This will be props that animals. It's showing us that map. And inside here, we're gonna call a callback function. And this callback function, we're gonna render our JSX inside it. So in here, we need to do a couple of divs and also show the name and things like that. So let me create one div here. So div, add a class name of animals and close it. Okay, div. And inside it, let's start with the name first. So a name, I'll say H3. And here, how do we render the name here? And this is the data. How do we render the name? The name of the animal.
You're gonna say props.name.
Props.name. Remember, we are inside the map, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
so do we need to say props?
Animals.name. Animals.name.
Animal.name. Remember, we already said props here. We're rendering all, we're looping through all the objects that we pass through the props. So .name, and then we're just gonna close it out. So that should work. Let me see.
We're missing a parenthesis. Yeah, one of those.
Okay, I think we're missing one more parenthesis. Wait, so.
Yeah, right there, I think.
Parenthesis.
No.
Inside it, yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, good. So because this is one parenthesis and this is another parenthesis, and you need both to be closed, as you can see. When I highlight one, the other one highlights. So now we render the names. As you can see, all the names here. We just need to render the images. So the images we're going to do it right above the name. So we're just going to say image, and then source. How do we set the source to image? Remember that the image is in here in the data. So right here is the image. How do we set it here?
Okay, curly bracket.
Curly bracket here.
Then animal dot image, I guess.
Animal dot image, like that.
Image, whatever you have in there. What's the name for the data? Yeah,
you have it in IMG. Okay. Do you see anything wrong here?
Yeah,
What is
yeah,
that?
go ahead.
Ahmed?
I think something is missing.
Okay.
Like you're gonna set source, you're gonna set to the attribute and say like equals.
Okay. So we're missing equal here, like that. Okay. So good. So, and also we need to add one more thing that's required.
Oh, the alter.
Alt is always required in React. In normal HTML, you don't have to have the alt, it's optional, but in React, it's required, otherwise it will not work. So the alt will make it the name of the animal. So alt will be like the alternate name for the image, basically. Alternate, I mean. So here we're gonna say animal dot name, and close out the image. Okay, good. So this is already, I worked on CSS, so it should be responsive. It's not responsive. Let's see. Okay, I have to put a div inside the name. I mean, put a div in here and separate these two. Okay. Still not responsive. What are we missing? Let me make, I don't think we're missing much. Okay, let me go back to here. Okay, so animal. Yeah, we're not missing much. But yeah, I mean, this is, I'll work on the responsive now. But as you can see here, we use the component did mount to set the state, and you call your your API here. Call API inside here. Okay, so API, any side effect you could think of, you could call it here. So that's one thing. Any questions so far? Any question?
So when you grab when you pass the, can you go back to the other app?
Yeah.
So let's say you have like either 3 or 2 or whatever states, right?
Yeah.
And you pass, right? You're trying to modify one of them. So you see how you make a shallow copy of it, right?
Yeah.
From the top, from the one you declared.
Yeah.
Now, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to like not do it specifically for one, let's say for animal state, right? Because you copy the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, and the reason for that is because we don't have any other state. So if we had another state here,
yeah,
then what we
and
need
you
to
have
do?
the data. You have the data right there. So another state that has the data, you don't want to modify it when you're modifying, animal state.
Makes sense. Yeah, definitely. So now what we did is here, what we did is we copied all this, right? We made a shallow copy of this. And this is the shallow copy. Now we only modified one thing, which is the animal here. So we said animal, change the empty array to the data that we received here. So that's what we did. If we want to change this one, we could just say here, we could just say another state and then change it to here something like we have to change some state here, test, right? So that's how we change it. And if we pass here something, let's say console log this state that another state, then that is what we receive. We receive the test right here, because that's we only modifying that. We're not modifying the animal. And also let's also show the animal ones, so you see there's no stuff that is test in here. There's no test. You can see these are all objects. So this means copy everything. So this will copy in everything, and then we're modifying what we need here, right? So what we need to modify. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So we're modifying here just the animal instead of all the states here. We could also make a copy of just the animal. So we could say here dot animals, and then modify the animal again. That also fine. It works fine. It's exactly the same way. That still works. As you can see, it's rendering, so that means it's working. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Any other question? I'm looking at the responsiveness. What's wrong with it? Okay. Any other question? Let me know. So let's look at the responsiveness. So now we said animals, we say display flex. We said alignment center, this and that, okay. And then, okay, animal image is fine. Position relative here. Container. Yeah, everything's fine. Should work. Interesting.
So maybe the containers, they're expecting two things because it won't make responsive otherwise if you're using a Flexbox, right?
So container, we only, okay, container is just the general container. So just to give some to just center everything. As you can see, we center everything.
Maybe animal, because animal has display flex.
Yeah,
that's
so animal is the images on the name. So we have display flex, and then we say flex flow column or wrap. So this should work. So this basically does a no wrap. Okay, column. Okay, I think this is where the problem is. Column dot. So I'm gonna go to my cheat sheet. So Flexbox cheat sheet. I think you guys remember this when we were doing the Flexbox. So we're looking for no wrap. Okay, so flex wrap should be, so if we say no wrap, all flex items will be on the line. Wrap flex item will wrap no multiple. Yeah, so I think that's the one we're looking for. We need to change this from no wrap to wrap. Column. We're in the column though, not the row. Okay. Yeah, this CSS sometimes, okay. And then alignment center, margin 30 should work. I mean, this is fine. No wrap. Basically, we say in the column, don't wrap the column. We say row, then that would be different.
The column is just going to be on top of each other, right? Stack up.
Yeah, stack up, yeah. So no column. So okay, so column is we need to change the column to row.
Maybe.
Okay. I think that it's been a while since I set this up. Okay. So animal is just the image and the text. So we're not gonna worry about that now. With 100% and row wrap. Yeah, this is what I was looking for. So this one is correct.
Okay.
So row wrap. So it's gonna wrap around the row, which is should show here. Maybe I zoomed in too much. Let's see. So center display flex 100 with 100. Let's see, 50%. No, that's fine. I set it up last time. I don't remember why it's not working.
The HTML elements. So in the app is expecting two things to be side by side, right?
Right. So in here in the app.js,
we have only one thing, so we need two things maybe.
So we have class, we have a container. This is spelled correctly, container, yep. Class name. And then we have the H1 and here we have it should be indented like this. Class name app. So this should work fine. And then we have that. So this is fine. Probably missing one more thing.
Title can you put the title inside within the app?
This title.
Yeah, so it makes two things.
So yeah, it's the
Great.
same thing. Will not change. See, it just
Oh,
moves
yeah.
to the side when you make it bigger. So that's not what I wanted originally. Let me just go back to CSS quickly. Flux flow. Flux flow is a mix of flux direction and flux tab. So we're wrapping around. So the size of image is fine, 100%. Height auto. So display flex. Yeah, I think there's something about Code Sandbox that's not allowing it to be responsive, but I think we could change that later. Okay, any questions so far about the setup here? Okay, we'll come back. We'll do another time the responsiveness. I think that's trivial. Let's go to the assignment for today. So here, assignment. The assignment is, most of you remember, we did the GitHub card, the GitHub API call on, I think it was the JavaScript. So we're going to do that again with class component. So here's the setup. Basically, the minimum is fetch a data from GitHub API for GitHub user, display the user data on the DOM, use class components when you need to hold any state or use any lifecycle components. So here's the planning. You read all this stuff. Fetch the data. I gave you how to fetch it here. So use this API. Some people were using github.com/users/their name. Make sure you give it API at the beginning. And then use component to did mount. So you have to put it inside there. Display the data. So create a component to display the data like we just did. So right now I showed you how to display its images and name. So you could do that too. Where is it? Fetch followers, you could do that too. So this is also another way you could show multiple images. And you could use the same style that we did last time. So you don't have to create the styling. I'm not sure if I can find, let me see if I can find the last one. So let's say GitHub here. So I think it was this one. And this is how it looked the last time. We zoom out, or if we just open this image in a new tab. So this was what I gave you guys. I gave you the CSS, so you don't have to worry about the CSS. So show it like this. Make sure you display the information or everything like this. So you have to copy the CSS and the HTML. Let me zoom in. So I gave you the CSS here, all of it. The HTML is here. So you have to make sure you could copy all this so that you could put it inside a React application. So you copy this part all the way to this div, and then make sure you render it in an appropriate way, right? So that it shows everything. Of course, this should be your component where it renders the images and the information. So that's your job. Any question?
So like basically, we're gonna create like 2 or 3 components.
Yes. So app.js and then 2 other components. One would be maybe like the list. So you could say users list or something like that. And another one would be like the card. So that's the way you guys learned it. So that's fine too. You could display it that way.
And where it says your name, you're gonna type your name your GitHub name?
Here, yeah, your GitHub username. So mine would be like, if I go to my profile, would be like Turan Ali here at the top, you see? So you're gonna put your username, which is right here. That's what you're gonna put in there. This is the API. So yeah, so and then you have the CSS, you have the HTML set up. All you need to do now is call the API and also use classes to do it. So because we're doing classes. And use the Lifecycle method like component and did mount. Any question? All right. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
What do we have? What do we have? And I mean, when do we have the Spring project? And
Yeah.
To Monday and Monday.
So yeah, so Spring project in here that we have this 2 days. So we have it tomorrow and Monday. Spring project will start on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have this tomorrow, which is Saturday, and then Monday, and then the Spring project will be this. And I set up a little schedule here, so you could go back anytime and see what we're doing. So today is the 9th. Got the 9th. We have a lecture here, Lifecycle. July 10, 12, we do assignments. July 13, Spring project. You could follow this schedule. We'll try to follow as close as possible, but the problem is we actually have Eid on 19th or 20th, right? So the month of Eid, the last Dhul Hijjah, is starting in like 1 or 2 days. So we're not sure 100% if it's 19th or 20th Eid. So we have to take like maybe like a week break for Eid. So inshallah, if it starts on 19th, then we're just gonna think the 19th is it Monday. Thursday, Monday? Okay. Yeah, 19th is Monday. So if it starts 19th, we have to take all the way that whole week, right? And then come back on the next Monday. If it starts the 20th. It shows here it starts 20th. Nobody knows that. Then we'll do the same thing. You just take that week a little bit shorter, but we're just gonna go back the 26th. We're gonna come back inshallah because we just don't have a lot of time, so we don't want to take too much time, inshallah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. See you guys next time. Send assignments, inshallah. Don't let anything pile up. Otherwise, it's going to be really difficult to finish. So try your best, inshallah, to send as many assignments as you can. Take care.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum.